Next tonight, the husband facing murder charges accused of killing his wife. Police now investigating texts sent from her phone saying she had an extreme case of COVID-19. Here's ABC's Ariel Reshef.
Troubling details tonight in the disappearance of Florida mom Gretchen Anthony.
She was a wonderful person that didn't deserve any of this.
The 51-year-old last seen in late March. Her estranged husband David Anthony now charged with murder and kidnapping. A neighbor telling detectives she heard a blood-curdling scream from Gretchen's Jupiter townhouse March 21st. A woman yelling, "No, no, it hurts." According to this police affidavit, friends and relatives then received suspicious emails and texts from Gretchen's phone days later, saying she was at Jupiter Medical Center with an acute case of COVID-19 and on a ventilator.
At this point, everyone's saying, well, this is really strange, So they called the police. Things didn't look right.
Police say the hospital had no record of Gretchen as a patient, but authorities finding her car in the parking lot. Security footage showing a taller white male exiting the driver's side by himself. Authorities say security footage from her townhouse garage also captured a tall male who looks directly at a camera and pulls it down. That man identified by a witness as David Anthony.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I'm Lauren.
I am Ken.
And this is Paradise After Dark.
Paradise After Dark is a bi-weekly podcast covering true crime,
unsolved mysteries,
missing people,
urban legends, and the dark side of the Sunshine State.
So first, if you would like to support our show, please subscribe to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Paradise After Dark podcast.
On Patreon, you'll have access to bonus episodes, our spin-off show Vacation Edition, early and ad-free episodes, discounts on our merchandise, and more.
Much, much more.
If you have a question, a Florida case suggestion, or you just like to chat, please email us at paradiseafterdarkpodcast@gmail.com.
But wait, there's more.
So we just had a really awesome, very long conversation with one of our, what do we say? Like an idol or someone we...
Definitely a favorite podcast. And I think at this point we could say a friend.
A friend and one of our very favorite podcasters. And it was super cool. And we have the audio of that on, it's a mystery. It's a secret who it is. So if you'd like to listen to the 2-part audio bonus episode, you can find that at our Patreon page.
Who is this mystery man? Actually, you could get a little sneak peek if you hit our social medias.
Yeah, I did put a little sneak peek out there, and I think a lot of people figured out who it was. But
yeah,
if you'd like to listen to the whole thing, head on over to Patreon.
Yeah, and join us. Like we talk about actually in our interview, in our discussion, our patrons are like family.
Yes.
So we love them.
We love them.
So Lauren, tonight's case is actually a little bit different because it's real recent. It's definitely something that's in the news all the time. I guess part of it is in the news all the time. So this is what happens when foolishness meets crime.
So this is the case of the disappearance and presumed murder of Gretchen Anthony. It all started in the early hours of March 21st, 2020, when neighbors reported hearing a blood-curdling scream coming from Gretchen Anthony's home in Jupiter, Florida. And then a woman yelling, "No, no, it hurts." So before we continue on this extremely bizarre case, let's look at who Gretchen Anthony was and a little background on the situation. Not a lot is actually known about Gretchen or her husband, David Anthony, at this point, but here is what we do know. According to her Facebook page, she's from New Jersey. She was 51 years old when she was last seen. She married her husband, David, in March of 2015 in Nevada, and she filed for divorce from David on February 28th of this year, less than a month before she vanished. Both Gretchen and David had signed the divorce papers back in mid-January. She's been described by friends and family as healthy and fit, a yoga enthusiast, and doting mom to her 12-year-old daughter from a previous relationship.
So they had signed the divorce papers, but they hadn't gone to court yet, so it wasn't like filed in the courthouse.
They had signed the papers, but they actually filed the divorce papers on February 28th.
Okay, but they didn't actually go to court yet. So they were separated. No. They were not divorced completely.
Yes, no, they were separated at this time.
But their divorce was not final. It's
right.
I find that to be somewhat important in this case,
right.
to some extent. So, well, David Anthony, he was arrested at about 10:30 p.m. on March 15th at an outdoor plaza in Riviera Beach, Florida, by the Riviera Beach Police Department after he was seen, quote, acting suspiciously while approaching young girls who were approximately 15 years old. He was pacing back and forth and sweating profusely, according to a probable cause affidavit. A police officer approached David after he realized there was black electrical tape over his license plate that made a 6 on his license plate appear to look like an 8. Anthony allegedly told the officer his stepdaughter likely altered the plate because she enjoyed playing with tape. When approached, David allegedly reached into his vehicle for some type of item, prompting the officer to order him to put his hands up. He then allegedly tried to reach into his vehicle for his license, but the officer drew his weapon and ordered him out of the vehicle and onto the ground. When another officer attempted to arrest him, he jumped back in the vehicle and slammed the door on the officer and struggled to get an unknown object, according to the affidavit. The officer ultimately handcuffed David, and he was charged with resisting an officer with violence. Okay, so to break it down, and this is after watching the body cam footage, the reason the cops got called to this scenario was because he was suspicious he tried to approach some 15-year-old girls. Now, if you heard the dates in there correctly, March 15th, this was 1 week prior to Gretchen's disappearance.
Right.
So like Lauren had said earlier, March 21st was the last day she was seen. This was March 15th.
Right.
So if you watch the body cam footage, you can see where he says he jumped back in the truck, and you don't realize, he kind of was kneeling down, or he's sitting down, I guess, on the ground. So sitting on the ground, the cop thought that he had everything under control. He was waiting till another officer came, because obviously he felt suspicious. Once he drew his weapon, obviously he felt threatened, so he was waiting. Well, then he jumps back. When the other officer shows up, he tries to jump back in the car, and he's trying to struggle with her, resisting arrest, if you will. Bangs her and slams her arm in the door. They finally get him out, and they use some nightstick or whatever it was, and they kind of beat him down a little bit. I guess he had something in his hand, and it dropped out of his hand. They never did tell us exactly what it was.
Right, what was in his hand.
But what they did find is they found a very large knife underneath his seat, and in his car they also found his passport and a large amount of cash. And this was 1 week prior. And it's funny because in the video, you can see like that his truck has so much stuff in the back, but there's like these white sheets over the top of it. You don't really know what it is. And obviously, when I saw the video, I'm like, oh my God, this is so suspicious. But then I saw the dates and realized this is a week prior. But of course, it just shows that, and you can see the video. You can tell he's acting very weird. Mm-hmm. And he had a dog with him. What kind of dog was it?
It was a husky.
Husky. That's right. So anyway, that was sort of his incident a week prior to Gretchen's last being seen, which if you can find the body cam footage online. It's just, you get a feel for exactly how he was behaving that night.
Right. And so it was a little difficult. I really couldn't find much background information on David Anthony. I did find that he does have a bit of a criminal record for minor drug things, but then there was also an arrest for robbery at one point. But there's just not much about his past other than, what people are saying now.
Well, a couple things to know about him, like in this scenario here, he's not a little guy. I mean, he's a big dude.
He's 6'7".
Yeah, he's a big dude. So, and it was funny because in the body cam footage, he looks at the police officer. He goes, "Are you okay? You doing okay?" And the cop's like, "I'm doing fine. I mean, why are you asking me that?" Mm-hmm. So, but that's really all we don't really know much about his past. But I guess was he a personal trainer?
Yes.
Yeah, a personal trainer. He like a gym guy or something.
Yeah.
So,
and I believe, on his LinkedIn account, which I found, he says he's also a massage therapist.
Oh, okay. Got to be careful, those massage therapists.
So March 20th was the last time Gretchen Anthony was seen at work or by anybody other than her husband, David. In an interview with Good Morning America, Jennifer Rogers, Gretchen's coworker, described her as an extremely positive and motivating person, and said she was in good spirits the last time she was seen. However, when she didn't come into work on Monday, March 23rd, colleagues at the Florida utility company where she worked were surprised not to receive a phone call or even text message from Gretchen.
She was pretty consistent then.
Mm-hmm. So Rogers said that on March 24th, she and her coworkers received what they described as an unusually worded email from Gretchen Anthony's work email address. The message, allegedly written by Gretchen, said she developed a low-grade fever over the weekend and awoke to shortness of breath this morning and was going to the hospital to get tested for COVID-19. The language in the email was alarming, Rogers remembered. It didn't sound like her, it was just very strange.
That's a funny thing about text messages, and people need to realize it's like if me and you have a conversation and you say something sort of out of the ordinary to me, I'm like, are you okay? Because that's not something that you recognize someone that's a friend, what they would say.
Right.
And nowadays, since text messages are so prevalent, if I send you a text, you're going to know it's from me.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if you send me a text, it's odd. I'm going to be like, are you okay? Or I'm going to call you, So
yeah.
You can almost read somebody's text and know who they are. It's almost like talking to them. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah.
I mean, it's like you get to know somebody really well. And obviously coworkers probably know you better than most friends do.
Right. Because you spend so much time at work.
Exactly.
So between March 23rd and the 24th, at least 5 people got troubling text messages that were purportedly sent by Gretchen. In one message, Gretchen said she was being quarantined for 2 weeks after being infected with an acute case of COVID-19.
Is there such a thing?
What's that?
I mean, with COVID-19, everybody's so scared to get it. Is there a thing such as like acute?
Well, acute would usually mean like very serious.
Acute, I thought was small.
No, in medical terms, it means like very serious.
Okay. I don't know why I didn't catch that. I'm starting to think it was a small case.
Another said she was being held by the Center for Disease Control because she tested positive for COVID-19. An unidentified woman said she also got a strange text from Gretchen Anthony asking her to take care of her cats while she would be allegedly in quarantine for 2 weeks because of coronavirus. Then a text that said she was being transported from Jupiter Medical Center to a, quote, CDC-approved task force in Belle Glade. It turned out later that this task force did not exist.
And the CDC wouldn't transport you.
No.
CDC is basically, why would they transport somebody?
That's why these are so odd, these text messages. By March 26th, messages from Gretchen Anthony's phone said she was being placed on a ventilator. Now, side note, if you're on a ventilator, I don't think that you can text.
Maybe you can. You can't call anybody, though.
But you have to be sedated to be put on a ventilator.
You know what? I'm very impressed by your medical awareness tonight. I am. I'm like blown away because, when I read that, I'm like, yeah, I guess that would make sense. If you're on a ventilator, you can't talk, so you would text.
No, you have to be sedated. You're not awake.
Okay. Well, you're clarifying it for me. I appreciate that. I'm just a big dummy over here. Don't worry about me.
So when friends and family who had received these text messages called the local hospital to check on her status, no one under her name was checked in.
So the hospital had no record of her?
Right. Jennifer Rogers said their boss alerted Gretchen Anthony's mother and then the police to conduct a wellness check. That's when it was discovered that Gretchen Anthony was missing.
The same day, the police towed Gretchen Anthony's dark blue Mini Cooper that they found in the parking lot of the Jupiter Medical Center. Security video showed David Anthony's truck had entered the medical center complex about 8:30 a.m. on March 23rd. And security from about 5:20 a.m. on March 24th shows the Mini Cooper pulling into space at the medical center at the spot where the police later found the Mini Cooper. And a tall man is seen leaving the car and walking toward Old Dixie Highway. And like we said earlier, David Anthony is 6'7" tall. So he's a big dude.
I think that would qualify as a tall man.
A tall man. Because if they see me, no one's going to say, there's a tall guy on video. No, tall people are obviously tall.
Yeah.
Well, then they found blood on the steering wheel and the gear shift of the car. So, of course, anytime we all know in this particular genre that anytime there's blood found in a car on a steering wheel, that's never usually a good thing, especially on a car that's from someone that's missing.
So the next day, a friend told investigators she traded texts with David Anthony in which she asked about Gretchen. According to the arrest report, the conversation went like this. Friend: Hi, David. Have you heard from Gretchen?
Hey, ran into her randomly on Saturday morning. She mentioned something about going to the beach to ground herself because she wasn't feeling well. Then she proceeded to tell me I should plead insanity on some bogus police charges I've been dealing with. Haven't spoke with her since. Why? Is everything okay?
Friend: All we know is that she's saying she's at the CDC facility because she has the virus. Her daughter is with her ex-husband, but something doesn't seem right. This text conversation is important because David Anthony is placing himself with Gretchen on the same Saturday morning that witnesses heard screaming coming from her residence, as well as several other witnesses placing his vehicle in the neighborhood at the same time.
And this is the part where I talk about foolishness meets crime.
Right.
Because now he's placed himself exactly in the place.
Well, he's not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree.
You're saying he's
not the sharpest tool in the shed.
So what you're saying is he's not a rocket surgeon?
Right.
Or a brain scientist?
Right. Exactly.
Well, during the following days, as these strange text messages were sent to friends and family from Gretchen Anthony's phone, a black pickup, later identified as David Anthony's, was last seen at Gretchen's home with a tarp covering several items in the bed. That's what I talked about a week prior, that they actually have this vehicle on body cam footage with tarps covering stuff in the vehicle. There were things covering whatever it was he had in the back of the truck of his Nissan, I think it was.
Yeah.
In the body cam footage. Now, neighbors who were already suspicious of the activity happening around the home due to the screaming they heard that Lauren described earlier on the evening of March 21st, took photos of the truck and had surveillance camera videos of the vehicle. Yeah, there are people that took screenshots of the truck, the license plates, and an unidentified neighbor reported seeing water in what appeared to be a white chemical draining into the street from the closed garage at Gretchen's residence. And another witness, who was not named in the report, told police she was afraid David Anthony had done something because he had, quote, issues. The report did not elaborate what these issues were, but there's a chemical running out of the garage. So right. We all suddenly start getting suspicious at this point.
Yep. So after speaking with several concerned friends and family members, on March 25th, investigators reached out to David Anthony but got no reply. When they went to a possible residence of his, they met a woman who said she hadn't heard from him since March 24th, when he took his dog and told her that he was moving to Costa Rica.
So he said he was moving to Costa Rica, I guess, which makes sense why they found the passport in his truck.
Well, they found the passport in his truck a week before.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you get all that stuff ready to go.
Well,
I mean, he's planning ahead. He already knows about coronavirus and text messages.
Well, let's just keep going and see where this leads us.
Now, police were able to locate a signal from Gretchen's cell phone in Pensacola, Florida, about 600 miles away from her residence. Ping! At about the same time, David Anthony attempted to sell a bag of women's jewelry at a store in Pensacola. I believe it was a pawn shop or jewelry store. I don't remember exactly. Now, he and the vehicle were caught on surveillance camera footage. And another witness in the same area later told police David Anthony had sold jewelry to him, saying it belonged to his mother, who died of COVID-19. Here we go with that COVID excuse again.
Yep.
Now, a friend of Gretchen's later identified one of the pieces as a ring belonging to Gretchen.
So when police arrived at Gretchen Anthony's home on March 26th, one neighbor asked him if they were there to investigate, quote, the attack that occurred Saturday morning. Though no neighbors saw anything other than the truck during the early morning hours of March 21st, they said they heard a woman's blood-curdling scream. One neighbor told police she went to investigate, but the screaming had stopped. Inside the home, police found 2 bottles of cleaners and a rag in the kitchen. Inside the washing machine, there were towels with a reddish substance on them that appeared to be blood. Broken glass and small droplets of blood were also found in the master bedroom. Police then went on to check the garage, where they were met with a key snapped off in the locked door. Officers broke the door down and were met with a large wet bleach stain on the floor. Cadaver dogs alerted officers to the area around the stain, believed to be blood in the garage.
So this, I guess, if they found bleach stains, would explain what the neighbors saw coming out of the garage.
Yeah.
When they said
like
they had the
water.
chemical stain. Exactly. The chemical, they saw this white chemical, which would make sense because bleach.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense now.
So on March 27th, police said signals from both David Anthony's phone and his wife's phone were located in Texas. During the course of the investigation, authorities found footage of what may have happened to Gretchen. David Anthony removed the cameras from Gretchen's home, but didn't realize that the footage had been backed up to a cloud. Now, the footage shows at about 6:15 a.m. on March 21st, video from Gretchen Anthony's Blink door video device shows a tall man laying in wait in the screened-in porch.
So somebody like just hanging out, like waiting?
Well, it says laying in wait. It looks like maybe he was crouching.
Okay.
I've actually seen some accounts that say he was crouching down, like kind of hiding on the front porch.
Yeah. And being a tall man, here we go again.
A woman, later identified as Gretchen, steps outside and muffled shouting is heard, as well as someone saying, "What are you doing?" Late that night, video from the patio camera, which appeared to have been taken down and brought into the garage, shows someone's head with light hair not moving. Beside it, a 5-gallon water jug with what appears to be blood on it. The man, who a neighbor identified as David Anthony, is then seen reaching with a gloved hand to the inside garage camera and pulling it down.
Okay, so let's just kind of piece this together. So now we know about 6:15 on March 21st, which is the last day I guess she was seen, correct?
Well, nobody saw her on that day.
But I'm saying, except for obviously
her husband,
what we feel to believe. Well, David put himself there, so I guess he would be this. That's right. So we had her kind of a muffled shouting and basically saying, "What are you doing?" And the video camera, I guess, had been taken off the patio and then brought into the garage.
Right.
And this is the same camera that later shows, and this is what we don't know. And all the reports show, it says, show someone's head with light brown hair not moving.
Light blonde hair.
I'm sorry, light blonde hair not moving. Obviously, we're going to, presumably it's Gretchen. But it's not just a head or a body. We don't know.
If that's not clear, if it's, and I've asked that same question.
And the wording in all reports is the same too. It's head.
Is it just a head, or is it a body and all you can see is the head?
See, now that's,
I don't know.
Yeah, we're kind of on the same page on that.
And that's not clear in the police reports or anything. So we don't know.
Okay. So that's what my confusion was. I'm like, is it, because obviously if it's a head, then we know we have a murder and a crime's been committed. Mm-hmm. If it's just somebody laying there, we don't know obviously what their status is, if they were alive or dead or what. Obviously we kind of feel, but anyway. And we also see that they witnessed David pulling the camera down because he's on the camera and it's obvious that it's him, correct?
Right.
Okay. So now a suspicious neighbor took a photo of David washing down Gretchen's blue Mini Cooper in her driveway. And I don't know if this is maybe had something contributed to the chemical, although they said it came out of the garage. Don't know. The neighbor's husband said that as he left for work the next day, this is Monday, March 23rd, it appeared that someone was cleaning inside Gretchen Anthony's garage. The neighbor said he smelled water and chemicals. And usually if you smell chemicals, it's bleach.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody smells. Well, I guess it could be Pine Sol. That's about the only two things I think of chemicals smelling.
Fabuloso.
Yeah, but Fabuloso just smelled like every Exxon station I've ever been in across the country. Now, another neighbor's security video showed David Anthony's truck leaving the home that particular morning.
Let's just kind of recap here for a second.
Let's do that.
So at this point, here's what we have. Gretchen was last seen at work on March 20th. In the early morning hours of March 21st, neighbors hear screams, and at least one neighbor described it as an attack. So I just kind of want to go branch off here. Why did no one call the police? And I'm sure our listeners have been asking this question this whole time as we've been telling this story.
I wonder if our listeners are like me. I'm like, when I'm driving, listen, I'm like, what are you talking about? I wish I could like call you right now and tell you. That is true because even in the reports, it says suspicious neighbor, even the newspaper articles, I mean, the research material, it says suspicious neighbors. They took photos of his vehicle.
If you heard like a blood-curdling scream coming from your neighbor's house, would you ignore it or call the police or?
I don't know because it's like around here, although we've learned here recently what's going on. But me and Lauren have always had this thing, and we've been together quite a long time, where if we hear a gunshot, we always look at each other and say the time. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I don't know if this is one of those scenarios where maybe we don't know what the scenario was between Gretchen and David. So maybe they fought regularly. I wish we knew some of that information so we could make a determination as to why this would be different. But if you've got people noticing him washing the car, you've got people, the suspicious neighbors taking pictures of his vehicle, taking pictures of his truck, taking pictures of him washing the car. They're obviously suspicious. So yeah, your question is valid.
Why haven't they called the police?
I don't get it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, your question is valid. Why is no one called the police at this point? They're waiting until the police are already there and they're like, hey, by the way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know if anything would have changed if the police had been called sooner.
Well, I think maybe if the police had been called, I'll get into that a little bit later.
Maybe if they were called the night that it all occurred, when they heard the blood-curdling scream. I mean, because we've considered it sometimes, not necessarily where we live now, but the old house where you hear something like that and you're like, should we call the police? Because we discuss it. I mean, what was that? Should we call the police?
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe if that happened, like, well, let's just wait and see what happens. So it is weird as to why these neighbors were.
Well, I think it's something called the bystander effect.
What's that?
So I did a little research on this bystander effect, and according to Psychology Today, the bystander effect occurs when the presence of others discourages an individual from intervening in an emergency situation against a bully or during an assault or other crimes. The greater number of bystanders, the less likely it is for any one of them to provide help to the person in distress. People are more likely to take action in a crisis when there are few or no other witnesses present. So psychologists Bibb Latane and John Darley attributed the bystander effect to two factors: diffusion of responsibility and social influence. The perceived diffusion of responsibility means that the more onlookers there are, the less personal responsibility individuals will feel to take action. And social influence means that individuals monitor the behavior of those around them to determine how to act.
So saying that on the second premise that you were discussing, the first one I totally understand. But the second one you're saying, so everybody else, well, let's just wait and see if somebody else does something.
Yes.
Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yes. Pretty much, yes. So here's some examples of the bystander effect.
One's a pretty famous one.
The murder of Kitty Genovese in New York City in 1964.
We talked about that and discussed that on our Patreon.
So she was a 28-year-old woman who was stabbed to death outside her apartment. And at the time, it was reported that dozens of neighbors heard and saw the attack and failed to step in and assist or even call the police.
I think there was upwards of almost 30 people that witnessed this.
And nobody called the police.
Or did anything and let it occur. Huh.
So one more example is the Jane Doe of Richmond High School. In October of 2009, a female student at Richmond High School was gang raped and beaten by a group of boys and men after a classmate invited her to the dark courtyard outside the school's homecoming dance. It was reported that she was treated politely and drank brandy with the group before the assault took place, which lasted 2.5 hours before a young woman notified the police. As many as 20 people witnessed the incident, with several reportedly cheering and videotaping it. She was hospitalized for scrapes and bruises all over her face and body, and later sustained scars from cigarette burns on her back, as well as hips that regularly pop out of place. Well, this case drew nationwide outrage. But it's just another example of a crowd not doing anything.
We see it quite a bit now, and, this is something we have to work to change, I think. Not necessarily, this is just a good case to discuss it because it's similar. Here's a situation where people are getting their phones out. They heard it. They got their phones out. They started taking pictures. They felt that something was wrong, but they got out their phones, their cameras, things like that. Whereas you see a lot of the stuff, like you see people getting their ass beat in the middle of the street and they whip out a phone and start videoing it instead of helping somebody. So, so we see this a lot on social medias.
Right.
That you start seeing people are more apt to grab their camera and film it than they will to actually get involved in it. And I think that might be something that occurred in this particular case. Obviously, these things have been happening going back to 1964. So, anyway, it gets to be frustrating, and I'd have no idea why people would not call the police because the neighbors were in their own homes, so there wasn't like a group of neighbors.
Yeah.
So that's what confuses me on this. But regardless, no one called the police at that time, and it really became prevalent when she didn't show up for work, and the workers started receiving some really weird texts. So to follow up, since he's got this all figured out, on March 24th, Gretchen's friends and family, they start receiving strange text messages and emails. And they were supposedly from Gretchen saying that she had been put on she had COVID-19 and was being held in some facility, and that now she's being put on a ventilator. And then suddenly the text stopped, which would make sense. If you're on a ventilator, like you said earlier, you can't text. And then her car is found, like we said earlier, at the Jupiter Medical Center. And the security footage showed her husband parking it and walking away, which we're pretty sure was her husband because it was a tall guy. And obviously they know who this guy is at this point. And so her concerned friends request welfare checks, and the police find what appears to be nothing other than a murder at the house. I guess a murder scene, if you want to call it.
Murder scene at the house.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then they find blood and bleach all over the place. This is adding up to be a crime scene.
Security camera footage is found showing David Anthony hiding on her front patio and attacking her. More camera footage is found from inside the garage that shows Gretchen's blonde head with blood on it and a big bucket with blood on it. So blood and bloody towels are found throughout the house. Police track Gretchen and David's cell phone pings all the way from Florida to Texas. And along the way, David sells some jewelry, presumed to be Gretchen's. So, what the actual fuck is this guy thinking?
Foolishness. That's what I said. This is when foolishness meets crime.
And I don't want to make fun because this is a very serious crime, and a woman is
missing.
She's technically missing. Her body has not been found, but she's presumed to be murdered.
Yeah.
But you almost have to laugh at how stupid this dude is.
Yeah, you got to be. You're sad and fearful for her. The problem, the one thing that I hope is he's so stupid that eventually everything comes out. But it's like he thinks he's this slick. The guy's an asshole, and he thinks he's so slick. He's gonna text friends, and he's gonna text and email coworkers and family, I'm on a ventilator, and he's using the COVID-19 excuse. And which in some cases people. And the biggest fear of that is you can't just go to the hospital and see someone that's infected. You can't do it. You can't go to nursing homes. You can't go to facilities. So, and at this point, it's still March. This is kind of new. So people don't know how to react. Okay, what am I supposed to do? Oh my God, she got COVID-19. I've been hearing about it in the news. So it's gotta be, it's gotta be, what am I supposed to do? You know what I mean? Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
What the hell do I do? So they just kind of believe it because it's in the news every day. And so, he's smart in that aspect, but stupid because he doesn't realize that everywhere you go, there's a digital footprint.
Right. So according to an article in People magazine, Gretchen's friends, who also knew David Anthony, couldn't believe the things they read in the news and police reports. Some friends described David's mental state before Gretchen went missing. Dakota Miniervini David Anthony's former boss at Orange Theory Fitness says there were two sides to him, one positive and one negative. He was either really great one day or he would come in and he'd be completely difficult. He was a very difficult employee, she said. We never knew which David we were going to get. We were either going to get Sparkle David or we were going to get suck the life out of the room David.
Jekyll and Hyde.
When we got the call Gretchen was missing, it was shocking, says friend Casey Kaplan. But then to find out David had something to do with it, it was just a gut punch. There would be days where it would just be like, oh, that was the best workout I've ever had. And then the next day, he was just kind of acting a little strange, Kaplan said. Another friend who worked with David at Orange Theory noticed David's widening mood swings at the start of the new year. I did tell Gretchen that he was off and she needed to stay away from him, her friend recalled. I think about that every day.
You know, I did some research because when you start reading stuff like this to see if he had some medications, and I couldn't find anywhere where he took medications. Obviously, most that'd be protected, but
yeah, that's HIPAA.
I understand that, but I mean, a lot of times, you know, you would see like, oh, reports state that he was taking this medication. I just thought that maybe I could find it. I didn't, so I can't verify that. But almost, if you got friends and stuff like that, I mean, everybody kind of knew this. Oh my God, this guy's weird, but somebody would have said something, but I couldn't find anything. There was also another person at Orange Theory who knew David Anthony and described him as difficult to work with and didn't get along with the staff. He became aloof and irritated and often showed up late. And he was fired in February?
Yeah,
February he got fired. And like Kaplan said, a great coach to begin with, hot and cold, and you never knew which David you were going to get that day.
On March 30th, David Anthony reportedly called the detective to say he'd spoken to Gretchen and she had prepared a statement that she was receiving treatment for COVID-19. He said Gretchen had uncovered tax fraud at her workplace and was prepared to submit a whistleblower report, but feared for her life.
So
what?
Wait, can you go back and elaborate what you just said? Because I'm so confused on that. I didn't catch that.
He said that he had a prepared statement from Gretchen that she was receiving treatment for COVID-19 and that she had uncovered tax fraud at her workplace and was preparing to submit a whistleblower report, but feared for her life.
So Mr. Got It All Figured Out called the detective?
Yes.
So he called the detective investigating her being missing.
Right.
Which means he obviously knew something about what was going on.
Well, they had tried to contact him a couple of times.
Okay, that makes sense. But they kind of already knew where he was, right?
No, they were following the cell phone pings.
Okay. You're right. And then obviously his trail. So he calls the detectives to describe, hey, this is what's going down. So in case you're worried, Mr. Detective, don't you fear. I'm going to fill you in and let you know what's going on.
So he also told the detective that Gretchen's previous husband had forced his children to send threatening texts and voicemails to the phones of both Gretchen and David. Now, what that has to do with anything, I don't know.
Maybe he's trying to misdirect.
I'm just telling you what's in the report. I would say trying to misdirect.
Yeah, trying to misdirect information like, hey, you should probably look at this guy if she's missing. I think that's probably it. Because remember, he's trying to cover every base he's got.
Right. So finally, on March 31st, about 1,900 miles away in Las Cruces, New Mexico, police tracked down and arrested David Anthony. He was charged with murder and kidnapping and has been extradited back to Jupiter, Florida. He was extradited back on May 14th of this year.
See, and this is very close. You know, I mean, it's close to us, obviously, because of Florida, but it's very close, meaning in time frame. So this is something that just occurred.
Yes.
So this is a lot of information.
There's still a lot about this case that hasn't come out yet.
Yeah, I think we should follow up.
I suspect will, especially when he goes to trial. And I would love to do a follow-up on this. So this is still an open and very active investigation, Jupiter Police Major Michael Barbera told People magazine. Locating the whereabouts of Gretchen Anthony's remains is our priority, and detectives will continue to diligently investigate every tip and lead until we find Gretchen.
So she's still obviously missing because, like we said, she's presumed murdered at this point.
Right.
And obviously, I think that would be the case if he's not around. A couple things we know. We know that he was trying to haul ass. We know he's got her jewelry. And we know that he is trying to sell her jewelry. And he's in Texas, which means he's got his passport that we described earlier. So he's trying to get out of here.
Well, he was found in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. He's trying to get to the border or something to that effect. So it would seem to me that obviously all the fingers are pointing right to him. So he's trying to cover his bases. And Lauren and I have had plenty of discussion off mic and obviously on mic. With coronavirus and COVID-19, you find that people being home together for long periods of time, we're starting to notice, and we've checked records here and there, there's an increase of domestic violence. I think the domestic violence percentages have gone up, what you said, 30%, I think we checked?
Yes.
But this is in March. So this was kind of when COVID-19 kind of started and really started to take its hold on the U.S. Because January, February, it was like, we better start paying attention to this. And then March, it was like, okay, this is the beginning of it. So it's not like this is something that started to occur. Obviously, their divorce was started in January. They signed the paperwork. Was it February or January? They signed paperwork.
They signed it in January and
filed in February?
Filed in February.
Okay, so obviously we're talking about a month after the fact, if you will. So a month later, now we're into March, and he's blaming COVID-19 and coronavirus on this, I guess because it was in the news and prevalent, so you just use that. So he's done that, but he's put himself in so many positions to where we know he's guilty, and I'm hoping that his ignorance in this whole thing can at least help us find where Gretchen's at.
Well, just as a side note, as we were talking, I looked this up, and Las Cruces, New Mexico is only 46 miles from the Mexican border.
So we know exactly where he's headed because we know he had his passport.
It seems like he was headed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We know he had his passport. I'm sure he was in the same truck.
Yeah. I think we can assume that he was probably headed out of the country.
Yeah. Yeah. So kudos to the detectives on this who worked and made sure, because they probably
caught
figured
him before he got to Mexico, because then he could have been gone in the wind.
Exactly. So, I'm kind of disappointed in the neighbors for not bringing this to attention. I really, kudos to the coworkers and the family that said, hey, these things are not right.
Isn't right.
The text messages we're getting are not something that Gretchen would send to us. I guess the verbiage I had read in some areas that the verbiage was way off.
Yeah.
And one, I think, was her daughter that said, hey, my mom would never have sent me this text. This text, let me show you. And I think they verified it was showing a text that David had sent to her sooner that showed like, hey, this is the kind of thing that he would say.
Yeah.
Am I correct? I think I did read that.
I don't remember reading that.
It was the daughter. The daughter had said, hey, here's a text message. And I guess because instead of like AM, he put A.
Yeah, I did read that.
Exactly. So, hey, let me show you who he sent to me sooner, or what he sent earlier or previously, or how you want to word it. But it's just, he tried so hard. So I'm hoping that ineptitude sort of stays with him and he kind of comes out and lets us know, where she's at.
Yeah.
I think sadly, for the family and her daughter.
At this point, it's really about recovering her remains.
Yeah, I think that's going to be it. Finding out where she's at so she, the family can bring her home.
But then the thing is, he drove all the way from Florida to Texas. She could be anywhere along that route.
Well, I think though, and I think he spent so much time trying to park the car and cover this up. I think that it's going to be in Florida. I don't think he would not have had her with him. I can't imagine that. So, and one thing about people that don't live in Florida is no matter where you are in Florida, there will be areas that are not developed, highly wooded.
Yeah.
They're what they call wetlands or preservation areas, because there's certain areas you can't build in Florida.
Right.
I don't care maybe I'm not going to say I don't care what kind of money you have, but there's areas that you can't build. And in some areas, if you try to do a development, you still have to make a preservation area. So there's a lot of wooded areas, swamp areas, low-lying areas, and I'm just hoping that somewhere nearby her family can locate her. Hopefully, like I said,
well, they may strike some kind of deal with him if he will tell them. I know you don't. I know you hate that.
I freaking hate deals, but
I mean, sometimes that's what you got to do in order to find out the information you need.
Well, can you? There's something else too. This is what blew my mind. I think I want to discuss this.
Okay.
His charges. His charges are a little bit different because obviously they're charged him with kidnapping and second-degree murder.
Right.
Why second? Can you describe that to me? Because that's another thing that frustrated me because it's not first-degree murder. If he's laying in wait on the porch, that's premeditated.
Once the charges have been, I think whoever brought those charges, whatever district attorney, was probably erring on the side of caution, and the charges can always be changed. They can be upgraded or downgraded. Yeah. And
so they could upgrade the charge to first degree murder if more information comes to light. So the initial charge is not what they have to roll with.
No, they can change the charges.
Now, once it goes to court, and what do they call it? The arraignment? Once they charge him in court, that's what they have to go with, right?
No, they can still change the charges.
Okay, I don't know why I didn't know that. Why did I feel like I did, but I didn't know that?
No, they can up the charges. And what happened was they probably didn't have everything right there in front of their face. You know, if you're in a hurry, if you catch someone, you need to charge them right away. You might not have all the evidence right in front of you of all the evidence that points to first degree murder. So you charge them with second degree murder, and then later on, you upgrade those charges.
So you think that, and I'm sure you're probably right because you know a lot more about this. Well, you know a lot more about a lot of stuff than I do, but they charge him that way. They can hold him. So they charge him with second degree murder. That allows them to hold him. Mm-hmm. And then hopefully they can get all the information, I guess, but without having Gretchen, I guess it's going to be hard to go with first degree murder because technically we don't know exactly what's on the video camera either. So we don't know exactly what they're going with. But second degree murder charges, the prosecutor obviously knows that he can get him on that regardless.
But what's going to happen is he's going to file a writ of habeas corpus, which is basically
Latin.
A motion. Habeas corpus is actually, writ of habeas corpus is Latin. It actually means show me the body. And it's going to say you don't have evidence that she's even dead because you don't have a body. So this should be a very interesting trial to watch. Who knows when he's actually going to go to trial? I know right now because of COVID, the courts are moving very, very, very slow. He is being held with no bond though. So he's in jail and he will stay in jail.
Well, that's one good thing about them catching him close to the border because obviously it's prevalent that he's a flight risk.
Oh, right. Yeah, exactly. That's probably one of the big reasons he got no bail.
Could you get bail on a second degree murder charge?
You can, yeah.
I guess it depends on the situation, but yeah, so the fact that he was hauling ass and they could track his movements quickly, that he was considered a flight risk, so therefore it would take bond off the table. So that's good.
Right. Exactly.
So, and this is, like I said, this is a recent case, which a lot of times, the last few cases we've done have been recent cases, but they're definitely like topics. I mean, this is the COVID-19 and coronavirus, and I'm fearful that we're going to start seeing a lot of that being used as excuses for some of this stuff. Mm-hmm. So this is just one of the first cases that we saw. Or seen, however you say it. Is it seen or saw?
One of the first cases that we've seen.
Thank you. This is one of the first. Do
I have to teach you English now?
Probably. Yeah, I've had beer, and it's late.
It's not even 9 p.m.
I'm old, Lauren. I'm old. But anyway.
Oh, good Lord, help us.
But no, I'm serious. I mean, I'm frustrated with how. I'm frustrated. I'm very pissed off with this guy because, he's using this COVID-19 as an excuse and trying to put himself at the scene, and it's just like you've killed someone that's a mother, a sister, a daughter, friends, coworkers, people that really cared about her that were like, hey, this is unlike her. And now we don't know where she's at. I don't know. The whole thing just frustrates me. And I'm afraid that COVID-19, not only is it devastating the country and a lot of different factors, I think it's going to change the true crime world, and bring a lot more of these violent cases to the forefront.
So right now there is a $3,000 reward for information leading to the recovery of Gretchen's body and the prosecution of David Anthony. So if anybody were to have any information, you can call the Jupiter Police Department at 561-741-2235, or you can call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-458-TIPS. That's 1-800-458-8477.
So, all right, everyone. I think that's going to be it for tonight on our show.
Again, if you'd like to support the show, please subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/Paradise After Dark podcast.
And be sure to check out our Etsy store for some awesome Paradise After Dark gear. We just got in the new buffs.
The new buffs. We got Squally buffs and we got Tomahawk buffs, and they are awesome.
I'm totally digging the Tomahawk.
I know. I love them. I love it. And you got to wear a mask everywhere now. So why not have a Squally one or something?
And remember, this is not a mask. It's a face covering.
Right. So please make sure to follow us on social media at Paradise After Dark Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and at Paradise Dark 239 on Twitter.
Yep. Go to those places and check out our mystery guest. And you can also email us with any questions or whatever you got at paradiseafterdarkpodcast@gmail.com.
Please make sure to subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening, and rate and review. This really helps us branch out to a wider audience.
Yes, it really, really, really helps. So 5 stars, please. And thank you, everyone, for listening
to Paradise After Dark.
Dark, 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 dark.